Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. We are continuing to read from the book الأجوبة الجلية في الأحكام الحنبلية, or the clear answer in Hanbali Rulings by Sheikh Musa bin Issa al-Qaddoomi rahimahullah. This is lesson number 26, where we will be talking about the prostration of forgetfulness and the prostration of recitation. So let us begin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا بما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله نفع الله به وبعلومه وعلوم مشايخنا في الدارين آمين. And as usual, we are reading from the translation by Sheikh Khalid Shah, and we are on page 77, and the author rahimahullah says number 60, what is the ruling on sujood sahu, or the prostration of forgetfulness? How is it to be performed? And he replies, sujood sahu is sunnah if one utters something of salah in the salat, the prayer, where they should not, and it's done forgetfully. And this refers to other than saying a taslim, because that would then end the prayer, but it includes things like reading something during the prostration, or sitting, as in reading some Quran, or reading the tashahhud while standing, or reading a additional surah in one of the last rak'ahs, meaning the third or the fourth rak'ahs, for example, and all of this to be done without remembering, out of forgetfulness. And the author continues, it is mubah, or permissible, to do sujood sahu for omitting a sunnah. And I think we covered this when we talked about the sunan of salah, that one does not need to do this prostration of forgetfulness for leaving out the sunnah, even if it's left out intentionally. The author goes on, it is wajib, or obligatory, when one a performs an extra rak'ah or sajda, prostration, standing or sitting, and then in parentheses, even for a short time, such as the duration of jalsa, istiraha, or resting while sitting before getting up for the next rak'ah. And I think we mentioned this before, but it's a good point just to reiterate, because there's also some maybe confusion on what is the correct prayer. But in the Hanbali prayer, we don't have this short sitting before one gets up for the next rak'ah, meaning like a rak'ah where you don't sit and read the tashahhud. In that case, after making the second prostration, one should just get up and stand immediately. The Shafi'is, they do say that it is recommended to sit at this point, but for us, if this is done intentionally and without a reason, it amounts to an additional movement in the prayer, which is problematic. Now, for those that might have difficulty getting up, etc., they are excused from this, but we're talking about people who are doing this intentionally and without a reason. the author goes on, B, salam before completion of the prayer. So anytime that one would start with assalamu alaikum, then he has ended the prayer. So this is the case that this particular action, if done before its time, would render the prayer to end early, and one would still then have to complete the prayer and then at the end do the prostration of forgetfulness. And just to emphasize, we are talking about one who has done this, saying the assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, who's done this out of forgetfulness. If it's done intentionally, it would then invalidate the prayer. And then the author goes on, C, omitting a wajib forgetfully, meaning one of the wajib acts. And if you recall, there are 8 acts that are the wajib acts. And it includes things like the tasbih while in the ruku' or the first tashahhud. And we just want to emphasize here, if one has accidentally or forgetfully left out one of the rukn or the pillars, he must perform it. This sujood as-sahw is to make up certain things, including the wajib acts, but any pillar, just like the pillar of the house, the salah is not going to stand without it. So all of the pillars, and we mentioned there were 14 pillars, they all have to be met. And the author goes on, D, doubt on whether one has performed an extra, or we can say additional act. And this doubt of the additional act should occur at the time of performing the act. So we have now mentioned 4 scenarios where it becomes wajib, obligatory to perform the sujood as-sahw or the prostration of forgetfulness. And an important point to mention is that any time that it becomes obligatory, wajib, to perform the prostration of forgetfulness, if one intentionally does not do it, his prayer becomes invalid. And then the author goes on, method of the sajdat sahw or prostration of forgetfulness. It is to make 2 sajdas or prostrations either after the tashahhud and before the salam, or it is after the salam of salat, then another final tashahhud is done and another salam is performed. Al-Qadi said there's no difference of opinion that both are permissible, meaning making this the 2 prostrations before or after the salam. However, doing it before the salam is generally better, assuming that one can do it at that time, meaning if you've done the salam early, meaning you've ended the prayer early, then obviously you have to do it at a later time. So more specifically, one would make the takbir, say Allahu Akbar, and then make the 2 prostrations, and one would read just what one reads during the prostrations as if they're in the prayer. And then one would sit conforming to the prayer that they're praying. So if it's a 2 rak'ah prayer like al-Fajr, one would sit in the iftirash form, and if it was a 3 or 4 rak'ah prayer, one would then go to the tawarruk sitting. And then one would make the taslim, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Now, if one has forgotten to do the prostration of forgetfulness, if a long period of time passes, long according to the urf or what is customary, then he does not perform the prostration of forgetfulness. Likewise, if he does hadath, if he breaks his wudu, he will also not perform the prostration of forgetfulness. Or if he exits the masjid, he will likewise not perform the prostration of forgetfulness, and the prayer would become invalid. He cannot correct it at that point. And likewise, just to clarify, one would not perform the prostration of forgetfulness for forgetting the prostration of forgetfulness. So in those cases when we said like the long time has passed, or one has broken the wudu or left the masjid, you can't correct not performing the prostration of forgetfulness. And then we have the situation of when one is a follower. So he's praying behind an imam, but he has left something out of his own prayer, one of the four things that we've already mentioned. In that case, he will complete the prayer with the imam, and after the taslim, he will then do his prostration of forgetfulness. Then there's another scenario when one is praying behind the imam, and the imam himself has left out something of the four things we mentioned from his prayer. In that case, the imam will also make the prostration of forgetfulness, and the follower will follow the imam regardless of whether he has forgotten that thing that the imam has forgotten or not. Another important thing that I don't think is mentioned in this book, but it's just, what to do with a doubt. Now one has to be careful to differentiate between an actual doubt and a waswasa. So we want to avoid some type of obsessive behavior or something other than that, but when one has an actual doubt specifically about not performing one of the rukn or the pillar acts, such as a doubt on the number of rak'ahs that he's prayed, one then acts according to certainty or builds upon certainty. And this means trying to identify the least number. So for example, if you are praying al-Isha and then at some point you're not sure, am I praying the third rak'ah or the fourth rak'ah? And it's a genuine doubt, you will go for the lesser number, meaning the 3 rak'ah. And one would still then perform the prostration of forgetfulness because this doubt amounts to adding an additional rukn. But similarly to what we mentioned about omitting one of the wajib acts, this should still be happening around the time of that act. So if the prayer has ended and one is having this doubt, it doesn't affect him. And Allah knows best. And we will quickly explain about the prostration of a recitation. This occurs 14 times in the Quran, including twice in Surah Al-Hajj. And for those who are reading the Quran, it's usually denoted by a specific symbol. And just quickly, I am mentioning it here because in my notes, this is when Shaykhuna Dr. Mustafa Hafidhullah was mentioning the issue, it would generally be under the section on the voluntary prayers. And if you recall, there are some things in the order of the book, of this book, that's different from Dalil al-Talib. So normally that would come later, but here, just because it's in my notes here, we will be talking about it here. So in this case, one would read the takbirah, Allahu Akbar, go down into sujood, and would read the supplication as what one would normally read in the sujood, Subhana Rabbi al-Ala. Do this just, as I said, just as in the prayer, and then get up from the sujood, another Allahu Akbar. Now if you're in the prayer, you will be standing, you will go down, make the sujood one time, and then come back up standing. And it is recommended that the imam continue to read something before going into actual prostration. Now for the one who's not in the prayer, it's slightly different. So assuming he's sitting, he doesn't have to get up or anything. He can just go into the prostration, Allahu Akbar, read the supplication, Allahu Akbar, come up, and then he can make just one taslim to his right side. One does not read the tashahhud, nor is it sunnah to read the tashahhud. This is considered as a type of prayer, so one would also want to meet the other conditions of the prayer, such as being in a state of tahara, making prostration in clean clothes with a clean body, meaning free of any najasa, on a clean place where you're making the sujood, and facing the qibla. And other conditions of the prayer would also apply. So if it's, for example, out of the prayer, the person who is reading this verse where there is a verse of prostration, they should fulfill the conditions of being an imam. So for example, if a woman was reading it, you would then not go down and make the prostration, because she does not fulfill being an imam, assuming you're a man. She could, perhaps for other women. And when one is outside of the prayer, this would also apply to someone who is specifically and intentionally listening to the recitation. If just you've kind of overheard it from somewhere, you don't have to join in. And for this prayer, the single prostration and the single taslim are the two rukns of the prayer. So that is the description of the sujood al-tilawa, or the prostration of recitation. We will end here, inshallah. As always, please don't forget us and our brothers and sisters around the world in your dua. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.